Julep, pop, 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 julep, pop, 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 woo!
Okay, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Evan Growth live stream, episode 46 today. As always, I'm Rymar. I'm here with Joe. Today, we're going to talk all about Webflow and how it kind of lays in the path of the future of web design. So we're going to compare it to WordPress, Wix, Squarespace. We're going to look at kind of the industry as it's evolving right now and talk about why we think Webflow is the future of web design. But, you know, before we get too far into this thing, let's Evan grow. Okay, what's up, Joe?
Hey, how's it going, Rymar?
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one.
It is going. And I was just saying, we miss a week and like you just get all the little, vibes again. So what's up, everybody? We missed y'all last week. Share some thoughts in the comments. Say what's up. We're going to start running through some of these like we typically do. And we'll say hi to everybody that's in here. What's up, Gabe? Demetrius is here. What's up, Daniel Brasnio? I always mess that one up. Felix, what's up, Felix? Jeremy's in the house. Obviously, Joe is here with us. Babas, we'll put Joe's comment up there just for good too. WKD's in the house. What's up? Let's see, Maria, John Philippe, Magdalena's here. Tanette, what's up, Tanette? Kayla Williams, Lizzie Curtis, Babas, what's up, Mark? Babas saying he's been playing with the new attribute custom select all day. Love it. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Yeah,
nice.
We're going to open right with that. So actually, again, what's up, everybody who's hanging with us today? Again, we're talking about is Webflow the future of web design. But before we do that, you know how we usually do. Actually, we experimented with the last time, so we're going to try this again. We're going to go into some tweets and mentions. And it's going to start actually with Joe. Yesterday, you
Nice.
you shared something in the on Twitter. You want to talk to us about that?
I did. Yesterday on Twitter, I hinted that we were going to release a new solution in attributes, custom form selects. And there was a hint, just a hint, and then it got a lot of traction. I posted it again the next day saying that if it got over 100 likes, if that tweet got over 100, that we would release it. And that's exactly what we did. It got over 100 in probably an hour. And that next hour, we released the solution. And what it is the ability to create a custom designed form select element. If you have built more than one website, you probably know that select elements are very difficult to design. And when you're using a form, it's very common that you need the select element. The current solution would be a lot of CSS, a lot of JavaScript, and a lot of confusion. It's usually not a neat and organized process. So we've created an attribute solution that requires just one attribute to link your select element with your Webflow dropdown. And it's super integrated to Webflow. It works with Webflow interactions. It works with the current state, with the focus state. And it has some really good UX things in there, like not showing select an option as the first option or having a custom reset options button. So we released this yesterday. It's gotten a lot of love, and I think that we're going to see a lot more beautiful form building inside Webflow from this.
Yeah, super cool. And again, just the value of following on Twitter to get early access to those sneak peeks and things like that. Let's see, what's our next? Is that all you had to say about attributes, Joe? You got anything else on that, on the form select?
That's it.
Great.
Yeah, I guess what I'd like people to do is share the results. There are no limits for design. So as we know with selects, there are a lot of visual limits. We have no limits with the drop-down element. So share this. If you have something, tweet about it. Let us know. We'll retweet it. We'll like it. We'll share it with our team. Be active about this. Let's get some really cool examples of this.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Yeah. And it'd be cool to see that in general, whatever you're doing with these attributes things, share that with us. Lots of you have been sharing those things with us. We're going to go through some of those as part of this shout out thing. So the next one is this guy, Rob Reich. And I wanted you to actually address this. I don't know if you saw this one, but he asked, what's the hype with That's Finsweet? Looking to dig in a bit. Is it a tool to clean up your design systems? What is its main focus? Clonable pre-made templates and components, just asking questions here. And a lot of you all kind of replied back and shared some thoughts about what Finsweet is, but I wanted to get like Joe's thought here as the company evolves a little bit. Started as an agency and now it's kind of becoming this product company. So how would you answer this for Rob?
Sure. Well, Rob, in the context of how you're asking this, what is Finsweet? We create products and tools and resources to help you build better in Webflow. Webflow has some limitations, and that is where we love to come in and help you with a solution. So whether that's the extension, helping your workflow, whether that's attributes, helping you implement advanced functionality, or client first, helping you better organize your project, that's where we come in. We help you use Webflow better and use Webflow stronger.
Nice.
That's the best way I can say it.
Yeah, build stronger, right? Just get better with Webflow. If you're looking to get the game stepped up, once you've kind of mastered the basics, you always stumble into Finsweet, and that's kind of how that journey starts in my mind. So, hopefully Rob digs in a little bit there and learns a little bit more. But JP, I don't know how you say this, Treen, I think, JP Treen, threw up a client first website in like 2 hours, so just wanted to showcase that folks in the community are sharing this kind of stuff, optimizing their performance. So going back to Rob's question before this, this is it. We're helping people build faster and more efficiently in Webflow. So shout out there. I just saw this in the comments too. I wanted to give Luke Netty a shout out. Let's see, where is he? Let's go to this comment here. Luke, hey everyone, first time joining live, so shout out for Luke. He found the Finsweet episodes from the past and was diving in, gave us a shout out online, so told him to join us. He said he'd hang with us, so we told him we'd give him a shout out. So what's up, Luke? Thanks for joining us. And anybody else who's new, let us know in the comments, share on Twitter. We are starting to kind of like highlight and showcase some of this stuff. So okay, next, Colin Cooch does a video walkthrough creating simple filter systems with attributes. So that was kind of cool to see people from the community again using these resources. And we're seeing this more and more. We're seeing people creating resources with client first, with attributes, with the, like doing different things and just kind of sharing those templates with us. So again, continue to do that. We'll continue to share some love on the show here. This one was kind of cool, Joe. We saw another job listing with client first as a requirement. So if you're a Webflow visual developer and no-coder based in London, Side Labs is looking for a designer and no-coder. So maybe we can share that job description in the comments if somebody could maybe dump that in there.
Anytime we see a job posting with client first in that description, we get excited. We share it internally on our Team All channel because it's exciting to see. It's exciting that we've released something and now people are making that a requirement to go and get a job. So that means it's working. That means that people are adopting the system, and that makes us really, really happy. So nice. Yeah, go check out Side Labs. And if you're interested, go and apply for that.
Great. Okay, so that's kind of the shout outs that we've got for today. Let's see. We'll finish up the folks in the comments. Some of y'all got in here late. So what's up to Jay, Stephen Hilario, Pablo Cortez, Penny, what's up? Ariana. Melinda is saying, love from Sri Lanka. Almost midnight here. So thanks for hanging out late with us. Dale Jensen is here. Okay, so now we'll jump to events. Let's do some quick events updates. So let's come back to this. And as usual, our Floxy's Lady, we always like to promote their stream. They've got, actually, I don't have my events to share link up. Oh, no. Okay, Floxy's are hearing from the No-Code Conf, Nishi Mayakar, about her entry in the speed building challenge. So they're going to be going over that. Right after that is the Q&A. So Webflow's doing this Q&A with Vlad once a quarter. That's coming up tomorrow. We'll all be crashing the stream, so come join us in the comments. We'll be hanging out and watching that and seeing what the updates are. Obviously, this is the first time they chat after No Code Conf, and so we'll get a chance to kind of ask Vlad some questions directly about the feedback on that. I'm sure they'll have updates about what's going on. Hopefully, we can get a little bit more info on connecting the dots on when some of these things are going to be available. So stay tuned on that. Community. Oh, the ugly website party. Okay, so I actually had to step away. The reason we canceled the stream last week, I had some personal things that come up, so I had to step away from some planning stuff. And Colleen took the ball here. So Colleen is going to co-lead this ugly website party. We'll help her promote and do what we can, but that's tomorrow too. Come hang out with us and build some ugly websites or review the websites that people have built. 2 more events. Winter Wrap. The Seattle Webflow meetup is doing this Thursday, December 16th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I'm not sure how that translates to wherever you are in the world, but Adrian is a great asset to the Webflow community, usually hanging with us on these streams here. So shout out to them on the 16th. And lastly, we're going to do a recap next week. And this will probably be our last growth live stream for this season, because we have holidays coming up, and I think I'm going to be traveling a little bit, so I don't know where we'll be the weekend after, but we're going to do a big recap of everything we've done this year. So we're going to cover all the product releases, we're going to cover all the community stuff, we're going to cover everything that's happened. Joe, anything you're super excited to cover as part of that release? Or some of that recap, sorry.
Can I say all of it?
Yeah.
I'm just excited to look back and see everything that we've done, how we've influenced people. And I would recommend, if you come and watch our show, tell us how one of these products or one of these tools has helped you. Share something. Has hacks help you learn something? Has cookie consent helped you do something special? Share that, because we're going to be talking about it. We want to see examples, and seeing real people have real results. That's going to make this stream really, really nice.
Yeah. And I think at the end of that, we'll tease a little bit about what we're planning for next year. We're still thinking maybe we're going to squeeze in, and I don't know if we'll get this in before the end of the year, but maybe like a goal setting session with the community. We'll do like a hangout and gather, and we can all get together and set some goals for what we'd like to accomplish next year. And we can use that then internally to help shape some of our content and things that we do as part of the stream. So join us next week. It's going to be a cool episode. We'll try to bring in maybe some folks from the team. Joe, it could be cool to figure out if we can have a couple different folks from the team hanging with us and get real interactive with all of that. So
love it.
Okay. I think that's it for announcements, events, anything else. Did we miss anything? I think that's all. I think we can get right into the disclaimers here.
Yeah. Let's do it.
And Joe, I'm gonna let you take the first one here, because I was a fence sitter on this one for a while. I was like WordPress and Webflow, and I remember specifically talking to Joe right before I joined Finsweet, maybe 3 months before I joined Finsweet. I was talking to Joe about this project, and I was like, it's a WordPress project, and it's $10,000, and I don't know if I can pass it up. And he's like, well, we're all in on Webflow, but you can do what you want. He was like, if it's a good opportunity, you should check that out. He's like, but we're all in on Webflow. So Joe, disclaimer, we are all in on Webflow. Tell me about that.
We're all in on Webflow. This has been a company decision since I started using Webflow. The moment I started using Webflow, that day I made the decision this was going to be the direction of Finsweet. So we have been thinking about this for, I think, over 5 years now. We are really dedicated to this platform. So you may have guessed, by the end of this, is Webflow the future of web design? Our answer is yes. And we're going to be explaining why we think that. What makes Webflow the future of web design?
Yeah, and Penny's saying here, a nice little bit of love. Finsweet is the future of Webflow. So, yeah, I mean, we're, like Joe said, we're all in. This is, that's our conclusion. We're just going to spill the beans now. We do think Webflow is the future. We're going to explain some of that. And our goal, like we talked about in the shout out section, is to really enhance that experience, right? As you're seeing with things like the browser extension, with attributes, with client first, we are solving real-time problems for agencies and companies and businesses as they grow, and then releasing those as resources to the community. And our goal really is to stay at the front edge of that. And so we're going to explain how that all kind of comes into play. There will be a ton of competition in this space, right? So disclaimer number 2 is that we haven't seen the last of new tools in the no-code space, right? If anything, we're just heating up. Today, we're going to talk about the 3 phases of no-code. I think that's kind of an interesting hierarchy of how I'm breaking down the 3 different phases of like evolution of what this no-code system is becoming. And I think that will be interesting to kind of dissect and explore. But it does tend to lead towards a lot of competition, right? When you see something like this, when you see something kind of gaining momentum and becoming prolific, you have Gartner releasing reports about this. You have things like the No Code Conf. You have all these different companies now using low code and no code vocabulary in their websites and their marketing content. So it is here to stay, and it's going to get more and more competitive. And I think we'll talk about some of that, and we'll talk about why we think Webflow wins as that goes. So kind of to get started, we wanted to take a look at where Webflow sits in the current ecosystem, and share your thoughts here, right? We're going to, like, throughout all of this, we'd love to know what you think about the things we're going to talk about. As you know, we always get back and forth in the comments. We try to bring a lot of that stuff in real time. And so we keep an eye on those comments as they come in. And where they're relevant, we will try to interrupt the show and bring that into the flow. So, Joe, do you want to give any thoughts here? Are you, like, where does Webflow sit in the current landscape of web development? How does it stack up to the competition? Like, let's prompt the audience here. What are our thoughts as we look at this?
Well, there are a lot of tools in the web environment. There are a lot of tools that can help you make a website. And overall, Webflow has a very low market share compared to many of these tools. However, I don't think these other tools have seen the same growth as Webflow, and I don't think these tools have the same type of community as Webflow compared to the size of the platform. And those 2 factors for me are a lot of what I'm going to focus on during this show: the community and the speed of growth. Super important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always go back to, and we'll talk a little bit about this. When I started in web design, I started with WordPress. And at the time, it was like Joomla, Drupal, and WordPress was like the battle of the CMSs. And I always talk about how I chose WordPress because of what I saw happening in the community. There were meetups happening everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. It was being developed and built and like worked out all of the time. And I was like, there's some energy here that I don't know how that affects the product, but it for sure is affecting the trajectory of this thing. And I went in on WordPress, right? And turned out that community did take that product to the next level. I think Webflow kind of sits in that same space. You've got things like SquareSpace, you've got things like Wix, you still have Joomla creeping around. Actually, I talked to a web designer the other day. They reached out to me because an old WordPress client of mine, like one of the first websites I've built, and if you've heard me tell the stories of the how I started learning web design, they're now looking to replace that site, and the web developer currently came back to me and they're like, oh, we're going to build it in Joomla. I'm like, but that's what they're comfortable in. That's what that developer is comfortable in. And there's a lot of functionality there. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how does it stack up, because there's a lot of things where Webflow falls short. We've done episodes about limitations. They obviously, like, the e-commerce isn't as robust as it will be eventually. They keep teasing memberships and logic flows, but that's kind of some stuff that you get baked in. It's at least the memberships and the user permissions and stuff kind of in WordPress. I've seen recently Wix, their collaborative editor is super collaborative, but it doesn't give you the freedom of Webflow. So Joe, talk to me a little bit about how it fits in just as a tool in this space as you see it. Like, there's all these front-end web builders in WordPress. There's things like Elementor and, all these different tools, Oxygen theme builder and whatever, but none of it really comes close to the full control you get with Webflow. But then Webflow has some shortcomings on the other side of that. So how do you stack that up? How do you weigh those things when you think about this?
Well, I like to think about how fast people pick up Webflow. I love to see somebody that jumps into Webflow and that week they feel comfortable in Webflow. And I haven't heard that about other platforms. I'm not a pro in Squarespace or Editor X or even WordPress, but from what I hear, people are not catching on to those platforms that quickly. Marketing teams are not adopting the platform as quickly. So yes, we can talk about us as web developers, but for something to get mass appeal, you have to appeal to people further than just the web development community. You need to make new people web developers. You need marketing teams to say, I want to use this. And that's exactly what we see in Webflow. we're giving teams the keys to their website that they can go and manage. And we're seeing this with all of our clients. We onboard a marketing team with no web knowledge and they love the platform. This is powerful. This doesn't happen in WordPress. I've never heard that before. You get onboarded to WordPress and you're just thrilled to be on WordPress. I mean, maybe a long time ago, but now that there's other competition and other tools, that feeling is not there. So for the platform itself, that's what's really exciting for the growth part of it, that anybody can jump onto it. And that's why this growth is so explosive.
Yeah, and I want to keep in mind, because I can imagine the WordPress, person here saying, yeah, but WordPress powers 60% of the internet. Webflow only has a couple million sites, man. So it's nothing. And it's like, okay, yes, and right. Like, so WordPress has been around for a long time. WordPress is open source. It's free to stand up on your own server. There's a ton of like themes and assets and stuff that you can build with WordPress. And it is a cool tool, like as it evolved, right? It was a blogging platform that kind of opened the door. And we'll talk about this in kind of the phases. Let me see how far we are out from the phases. Okay, we're gonna talk about this, and then we'll jump back into the phases stuff. So WordPress evolved as a blogging tool, and then became this web page builder, this theme builder, this landing page, thing that you could do, and then you could add different pages and add different templates, and you could style the theme, and it had this idea where you could just come and reskin your content, right? And so introduce dynamic data, and then you could come and have a look for that. And then if you wanted to a year later, you didn't have to worry about rebuilding the site. You could just get a new theme. And theoretically, that would propagate and all those changes would take place. But, because it's open source, because anybody can build on it, it's kind of gotten that Android problem where there's a million versions of it. And someone can talk about oh, I know WordPress, but what does that actually mean, right? Do you know Elementor? Do you know Divi? Do you know how to build custom post types? Do you know how to connect forms? Are you writing custom code? What does that mean when you say, I know WordPress, right? It's just kind of become this huge umbrella of a big part of the web. And we're going to talk about this, I think, a little bit as we go, but the power of Webflow is that it's not abstracting the fundamental building blocks of the web, which WordPress does, right? In WordPress, if you want to change the shape of a box, you click on this little box and then you get option settings and you can kind of change and adapt that, but you're not actually manipulating the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And WordPress doesn't do this. Squarespace doesn't do this. Wix doesn't do this. Joomla doesn't do that. None of these platforms allow you to actually learn how to manipulate the fundamental building blocks of the web, which is why I don't say those things qualify as no-code tools. I'm happy to debate this with anyone, and I think they'll fall into what we'll look at as phase one of no-code. But because these tools are just abstracting that stuff away, you're not really learning how to code. You're not really learning the fundamentals of how this stuff works, which I think is important. Joe, we talk about all the time, the more knowledge you know about coding, the better you become with Webflow. And it's because you're actually working directly with those elements of the web, even attributes, right? Attributes is it's just a fundamental attribute. It's hard to use the definition of of the HTML, right? You add an attribute so that the CSS can interact with it or JavaScript can interact with it. And so again, you don't learn these principles with WordPress. And that's where I don't think this fits in. This is where I think what separates Webflow. Your thoughts on that, on anything, what I just talked about there?
I love your comment about, I know WordPress. Well, what do you know? That actually doesn't tell me anything. I know WordPress. That statement is too vague. But when you say, I know Webflow, this is now a much more clear statement.
Right.
This means you know how to use the CMS. This means you know the basic building blocks of the web. That's a really powerful difference. And I think that really plays with why people catch on so fast, that you can just jump into the platform, understand it, and now you can say, I know Webflow. If you have a Webflow implementation, I can do most of them. That's powerful. You can't say that for WordPress.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think I was a WordPress developer for 7 years, and I never called myself a developer. I actually hated people that said I was a WordPress developer and they didn't write the code. Because you weren't a developer and you didn't know how to fix things. And people would come to me with a website and they'd be like, oh, it's a WordPress site. You do WordPress, right? And I'd open up the website and it's like a clusterfuck. What? they got 30 plugins installed and I never seen half of them. And, then depending on what theme they got, like, nope, I know WordPress with these 2 themes and this type of environment. Right. And so like, and if you could get lost in the technical. I could see the developer, purist saying, yeah, but I want to stand up my own server and I want to write my own commands and I want to control the anyway. I don't want to do any of that. I want to press a button and have a website with a blank canvas that allows me to express my ideas and not tie up any of my other time on that. Right. And that's, again, where Webflow separates itself from some of this. I was going to should we take a second and share your thought? Let me look through the comments while you're chatting. I think we're getting some feedback on this.
I think since, let's say, I used WordPress 6 years ago, and I think you probably around the same time, 4 or 5, 6 years ago. I think that as a society, as humans, we appreciate automation and we appreciate simplification much more than we did 10 years ago and much more than we did 20 years ago. That manual processes were more common. And now people like the idea of simplifying things and having less steps. There's much more of a focus on this as humans. And Webflow plays right into this. Just like you said, set up your own server, do this, do this, do this, do this. Yes, you have control of it, but now people don't want to do all those steps. If you can tell me these 10 steps are now converted to clicking one button and paying $16 a month for hosting, that's a win.
Right.
That's a huge win. So it's a big shift. It's a big change.
Yeah.
What do you got in the comments?
I agree. Let's see what Alan Connor's saying here. He says, I think the next evolution of no code is when AI really lands. I saw an example on YouTube where you could type what you wanted to do. So yeah, like GPT-3, I think is, some cool tools in AI where you could like tell it, hey, I want a thing that does this, and it does it for you, and you just give it the inputs and it does it, right? It creates the software for you. Sure. I think that will be a big change. I think we're quite a ways away from that being like functional and then also usable in our realm. I understand that progress moves fast on those things, but I think we're probably still a couple years out from where that stuff is truly competing with like a Webflow. I think we'll see that technology come in and helping the ecosystem. And I think we will see a lot of that evolve. But I think right now and for the next couple years, it's probably not a major concern, although exponential change moves fast. So let's see. I wanted to say one thing. Aditya said it earlier, and it was just about we're getting close to 10,000 subscribers. And I forgot. Oh yeah, Aditya. So if you're not subscribed, let's do this. Let's try to get by the end of January, let's see if we can get to 10,000. That's going to become a goal. Okay. Do you see anything in here? Webflow is content first because content defines templates and not vice versa. I don't know. There's still Webflow templates. I get that. I think in a lot of ways, Webflow will try to emulate WordPress. I think WordPress did a lot of things right. I think Webflow would be smart to follow some of that. It's not exactly the same path. Obviously, it's completely different products. So we'll see how that all plays out. Let's see. I tried Editor X and PineGrow, and they're pretty good. However, Webflow still has the edge, mainly because of its UI and its community. 100%. Yeah. We talked about that bubble responsive engine the other day and how clunky it was to try to navigate it and use it. And it's again, you're abstracting away these elements, which Webflow puts. That's what they have figured out: HTML, CSS, JavaScript visually. Everybody else is playing catch up to that. What were you going to say there, Joe?
I was going to make a comment about Wix. Wix has a lot of catching up to do because of how they positioned the company earlier in the company's history. A lot of catching up. If you talk to most people in the web industry, if you're a web developer from any platform and you bring up Wix, it's instantly discounted. Because Wix historically is known as this system for absolutely no code, drag and drop every single element, fill in the text field to populate the data. It's too much of no code. And I remember looking into Wix as an option when I was looking away from WordPress and just opening up Inspector and looking at all the BS HTML and attributes that are added to every single thing. It was a mess and it was terrible. So I understand that they've made big changes with Editor X, but I think they have a lot of catching up to do. A lot.
Well,
And still, we're still hearing a lot of people saying Editor X is great, but Webflow is better.
yep.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to your entry level point. I think Webflow is still a little difficult for the average just designer to jump in and not have to learn a little bit about CSS positioning or how CSS works or a little bit of this stuff, right, to just get an upper hand. Where I see Webflow potentially really taking off is like once they open up this component door, and then they allow like you could create full design systems and create something that's almost like a theme for what WordPress was, where you could do some of what you're saying, Joe, because a lot of people don't want, as flexible as it is, like most people, some people will be overwhelmed by that complexity. You know, like there's a reason Wix and Squarespace are good solutions for some people because, hey, I can stand something up in a couple minutes. I modify the text in this template. You know, I add a couple things here and there, and I got a website.
Sure.
But you know, for people who are making a living at this, people who are looking for flexibility moving forward, and like you said, people who are looking to understand the way this technology works without everything just being absolute positioned or living inside of some theme that you don't control, you know, that is gonna make it, you know, a distinction there.
Totally.
Daniel's saying, I started playing with Y code, but it's so oversimplified that's actually confusing and hard to work with after the Webflow experience. Yeah. I'm not familiar with Y code, but I see a lot of people actually also mimicking that same style of interface. But then it's not as fluid or it's not as crispy or it's not as like, and it's, I don't know. Pablo Cortez, Webflow is the GitHub of no code. If they ever figure out how to like send the front end code to a place like GitHub that you could just sync with a back end or something like that, sure. I don't know if I like that analogy of Webflow being the GitHub, but it is a powerful platform. Let's see.
Let's
Go ahead.
I'll read this one. I received messages from so many people on LinkedIn who leave other platforms and even other career paths to move to Webflow because they feel like Webflow's too good and see a future with it. Absolutely. And this comes right into community. There is a lot of success in Webflow. There's a lot of stories of people starting from nothing and growing careers in Webflow. And when you see that real action happening, you automatically gravitate towards it. So absolutely it did. Yeah, I see that same exact thing.
Yeah. And what was this other one too? There was another one right here. Dale saying, I've worked in WordPress, Muse, Squarespace, one or two more, but nothing empowers like Webflow. And of course the community around it, 100%.
Yep.
You see anything else there, Joe?
Yeah, there was one from Michael. I'm only in Webflow because of Greamer. You know, that's a nice one because I see that as Webflow community action. That Webflow has created that education to help onboard you. I see this as a community thing, this education part of it. And I don't think that there's an official onboarding, an official training system for most web platforms. Maybe they have some tutorial videos, but nothing like Webflow University. So this to me is a really big community play, and this is how the community grows, and this is a community effort from Webflow. Plays right into it.
Yeah, well, and because of the momentum and because of how people like what this unlocks in people, like if you understand Webflow and you've been beating your head against WordPress or Squarespace or any of these other things for a while, and you finally come to Webflow and you experience this freedom, it becomes intoxicating. I remember when I first learned Webflow, I literally spent like 50, 60 hours a week in the platform, playing, touching, building, you know, and like all I wanted to do was build. I'm like, oh my God, look what I can do, y'all. And so like it just became an obsession. And that is leading to what's driving this community. And, you know, like we're probably behind in that wave, right? Like more people are coming on in the adoption. And as those people grow and build their careers, like this is going to jump up out of nowhere and people are going to be all of a sudden be like, yo, where did this come from? We're obviously seeing it. We know it's happening, but I think a lot of the other web development world is going to be late to this party and understanding that because of what we talked about with like the Joomla developer earlier. It's their stack. It's what they know. So if I know WordPress, I don't want to like spend 6 months relearning some other thing. right? Most people's mindset is
Sure.
like that. If I am selling $5,000 Squarespace sites, well, what do I need to sell $5,000 Webflow sites? It's no big deal. I just keep selling these until, you know, like the horse doesn't need horseshoes anymore and everybody's driving cars. And you're like, well, shit, I guess I should have figured out how to make wheels, you know? And so like these things are coming. And so let's see. It's a shame we still need Squarespace to build proper e-commerce sites. So yeah, reality check. Webflow's not there on every level, right?
Sure.
Shopify,
Sure.
Squarespace, even WordPress, WooCommerce, like all these things are super powerful from an e-commerce side. Authentication, user management, like those things are not there in Webflow yet. Again, why we know there's so much potential when those things get figured out.
Do you want to go into
Yeah, I wonder, there's so many good comments here, but where should we head?
There's a lot of
I
comments.
know.
Keep these coming. I love when the community is active here. This is another part of the community, right? We're streaming here. We have over 80 people watching live talking about Webflow. This is great. It's super powerful, and you can feel the passion in all of these comments.
Right. Here's Reen Jansen saying WordPress interface suck, so clumsy, and the plugins can take over your dashboard UI with their Black Friday discount. Oh, the WordPress admin dashboard. It just became so ugly with stuff. I told Joe this, and we're true to that. Like our goal is to like work inside of Webflow and not interrupt that experience. Like every decision we make is literally shaped around like not trying to screw that up, you know? So I could see other people doing the same thing where they just start injecting stuff into the designer. And yeah, this is a big thing, that WordPress admin dashboard where like I log in and I see 50 notifications before I even see the data I want to get to. And I got to like close these things down. And then some of them are persistent until I update the plugin. And oh my God, it's a terrible nightmare. I love just having a clean dashboard. So again, I agree with this comment a lot there. Let's see. All right. Webflow is good, but after several years, say 10 or 15 years, is it okay for people to switching? I'm not sure what you mean there. What are you thinking, Joe?
I think the question is, in 10 to 15 years, are we going to see another platform take over Webflow, just like Webflow is about to take over WordPress? And that's a good question. I think a lot of that has to do with how they position their plugin marketplace, their developer program. That if they do these things correctly, if they do these things in the right way, the answer to that question is no. If they don't do it right, if they mess it up, like I think WordPress did, then yeah, I think that there is a downfall in the future for Webflow. But from everything we've seen, from everything we've heard, from everything that we're seeing at No Code Conference, it seems that they're on the right path. It
Yeah.
seems that they are on the path to provide this plugin infrastructure so that we can build more on Webflow without waiting for these native features.
Yeah, and WordPress has a lot of backwards compatibility dependencies that they have to work within, right? So that's why like WordPress just hasn't scrapped everything and started from scratch and said, here's the new thing, because they have decade plus of websites, 15 years worth of websites that they still need to have function. And so that creates a lot of technical debt. The product's open source, so anybody can kind of build and submit and get things done. And so like there's certain constraints in the world of WordPress that Webflow doesn't have. And we maybe need to do an episode fully on like, open source versus closed source and what some of that might mean. That's a whole different discussion. But I think there's different constraints that WordPress had. And I wanted this comment from Schneor here. Webflow can lose it quick if they don't accelerate the missing feature releases. They have an advantage, yeah, but they're not like, this is not like a done deal. Right? We've seen this in tech a ton of times. Joe, thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are key features that are missing. And let's say some magic competitor comes out and offers everything. I do think that people can switch. Now, the way that Webflow combats this is by coming out with this badass plugin marketplace, because the reality is they can't build everything, right? Let's look at a platform like Shopify that has a really nice, strong, organized, and very well done marketplace. Shopify natively can't build everything into their system. So they need to build a structure for other companies to integrate with the platform. And through that, you can now do pretty much anything on Shopify. Maybe you need some custom code, but there's a lot of solutions that can work with plugins. And that same thing is true for Webflow, that even if they have a huge increase in membership features natively or a huge increase in e-commerce, they still need that plugin marketplace for developers to come in and fill in the holes.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is crucial. And if they do this right, the plugin marketplace, I don't think they're going to lose it.
I agree. And I make this analogy all the time, about Webflow being iOS before the App Store and WordPress is BlackBerry. And everyone was like, WordPress is the way, or BlackBerry is the way. It's the enterprise solution. It's what everyone's using. It's what, it's what's there. And iOS was like, yeah, cool. Here's a cool toy to play with. And then they opened up that App Store and everyone was able to build on this cool toy. And then it changed the entire game, right? There's an app for that. We all know how that played out. We all know where Apple is now. And you've heard me make this analogy a ton of times. This is coming in the same space. So I agree, Joe. I think that's how you really open this up. Just like Shopify has, just like WordPress has, right? WordPress would not be WordPress without the plugin ecosystem because you can't have WordPress build everything. You can't have the core node build everything. What you need to do is have them build what they build and then open doors digitally so that other people can plug into that. So yeah, I agree that once that opens up, it's a game changer.
Let's talk about how this can be bad. In WordPress, they have the plugin infrastructure, but once you take a step away from that and you look at it, you can really see how poorly done it is. There are no official checks. There are no really verified ways to interact with these plugins. It's too open source.
Yeah.
So Webflow, I think if Webflow went full open source, it would be awesome. And then things would start to break.
Yeah.
And now instead of associating that break with the plugin, they associate the break with Webflow, right? If your WordPress site isn't working because the theme sucks, you're saying WordPress sucks. You're not saying Divi sucks. So you don't want that. So when Webflow does this, they have to be very careful about this open source versus closed source and find some place in the middle where it's organized, neat, and just works. And, I think Shopify is a really good example of this. I've used Shopify before, and it was great navigating the plugins, using the plugins, and I felt safe using the plugins.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah. And I think just like Apple, right? Like you're not going to download an app and crash your phone. Not going to happen. You're not going to have some huge security vulnerability because you downloaded an Apple app. Okay. With WordPress, you can because all those plugins are open source. And so like the market has to decide, and it takes a little bit of time for people to, okay, this is safe. I installed it over here. And then, it builds a community and they build a credibility as a product, and that becomes a credible plugin. I do like the open nature of it where anyone can kind of compete. I worry about like things like the App Store with Apple where they take a percentage of your sales. They kind of control that ecosystem. They limit who can publish stuff, right? So like WordPress, doesn't have these restrictions, whereas Webflow probably will. And it'll be interesting to see how they play all of that out.
They have to find a fair point in the middle. It can't be too far on one side. It can't be too far on the other side. There has to be some middle ground where the developers have the flexibility to do what they want, but there are still proper checks and verifications and a safety aspect to it where you can use a Webflow plugin and you feel safe using it.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that, we could probably do a whole episode on that. I worry about getting too far off the track here. Go ahead. You see some comments?
I would really, really like to bring up a few questions about the plugin marketplace. Is the plugin marketplace a done deal, or am I missing something? By Zuki. And Felix, have they hinted about something like a marketplace? Yes. At the first No Code conference, they hinted at this plugin marketplace. I was there. I heard Vlad say it. So yes, there are hints. Do we have deep insight into this? No. They're working on it. That's all we know. But it's coming. And really, the reason we're talking about this is not because they announced it. We're talking about, is Webflow the future of web design? And really, part of that answer is yes, if the plugin marketplace is done right.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to go to a point. Lots of people say like, oh, WordPress is open source and that's why it's safe because like it's mine and I can own it and I have full control of this, that, the other. And Webflow is not open source. And so, like I don't have control of it. And, okay. Again, if you're a technical savant and you know it all and you can do everything you need to do with a WordPress install, sure. Okay, but it's not really open source because you need a server. The code itself is open source, but you still need a server. All of the plugins that make WordPress do what it does cost money, which you have to pay for. They're proprietary, so they may be released as open source. But again, unless you can write the code, you're not going to get the updates. You're not going to get the support. And so, sure, WordPress is open source, but it is not an open network in the way that the average person can actually play with and manipulate the building blocks of it. Right. And so in that context, it's not really open source to most people. What Webflow is doing is open sourcing the design aspect of it, the building aspect of it, the ability to create something and then share that openly with the community, to create tools that other people can use, to create templates, to create assets, resources, clonables. They're open sourcing the design side of that. And I think that's a whole new layer of open source, which kind of comes with, I want to talk about this a little bit, these 3 phases of no code, because I think this is important. Let's bring up these 3 phases of no code here, and let's make sure we're in the right phase here. So I want to talk about these like just real quickly, because I think they'll be important to the conversation. And we may need to do like a full episode on these because I think there's a lot more to dive in. But I see no code kind of developing in 3 phases. The first phase was like spreadsheets and templates. Right? This was the introduction of dynamic data and teaching people like, oh, you can touch data, right? So this is Excel, this is Google Sheets, this is like WordPress themes, drag and drop editors, landing page builders. Like, this is where I would put the SquareSpaces, the WordPresses, those early stage. Again, they're just introducing dynamic data. They're just letting users kind of get a handle of touching and manipulating things on a screen digitally. That's phase 1 of no code. That was, long ago. Phase 2 is kind of what we're leaving now. I think my argument is that we're entering this 3rd phase of no code. Phase 2 is like single purpose tools really excelled. So this is where you get Zapier, Integromat, Parabola. These connect to other tools. It's a standalone logic layer, right? Like you can write code and write business logic and you can do other things, but you couldn't like without code do these things in a standalone way. Airtable turned spreadsheets into databases. So they took Excel, Google Sheets, etc., and they took the dynamic data concept layer a little further and they pushed it. Webflow did the same thing with pure visual abstractions of HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript, right? And so that introduces this idea of front end as a service, which I think we'll probably need to do a whole episode on that too. And Bubble, like Builder HQ, these tools that are like backends, right? So you can build, again, logic and backends, but they're clunky on the front end. Webflow is nice on the front end, but it's clunky on the back end. You can't do the back end. You got to hook up a Zapier. You got to hack a little, webhook. You got to do something like that. And so that's phase 2, right? Where we're at right now. There's all these cool single purpose tools. Phase 3 of no code is the complete ecosystem, right? So phase 3 is what we're entering into now, where you have things like Bubble, you have Airtable just announced their interface builder. So they've got this back end, they're trying to figure out how you put the front end on it. Bubble has got the back end, they want to figure out how you put the front end on it. Webflow's got the front end, they want to figure out how you put the back end on it. So in this 3rd phase, we will see these complete ecosystems build, and that's where I think this whole industry starts to get interesting. That's where I think this conversation really goes to the next level. Joe, any thoughts get sparked there?
The complete ecosystem is coming, but I don't think it's there yet.
Sure. I think we're just stepping into phase 3. Literally, the door just opened.
Just starting to open. We're knocking on the door. And actually, I just had an enterprise client call earlier today, and the client was looking for an all-in-one solution for everything. A learning management system, a front-end tool for the marketers, a back-end to manage their user database. And they were looking for Webflow as the source of all of this. And I explained to them, this does not exist yet. You can't do this in Webflow. It would be a really bad decision to do it in Webflow. And I think it would be a really bad decision to try to build your blog and marketing pages in some other platform that allows you to build the more technical things. There is no platform right now that does everything. We had a different solution where the marketing pages lived in Webflow, the other pages lived elsewhere, and we can connect them with a reverse proxy. This is now the current setup. So this ecosystem, people are looking for it, but we're just getting there. And I do think it's going to come, but not yet.
Yeah, we're not even fully into we're not fully baked on phase 2. This is the same
Right.
thing. People talk
Agreed.
about like Web 3 and Web 2.0, and they're like, oh, Web 3 is coming, Web 2.0 is over. And I'm like, no, Web 2.0 is just starting. You know, like these no-code tools are like the culmination of Web 2.0. I think same thing in this space. Like no code, there's going to be a lot of competition in the single-purpose tool space, right? That phase 2 of no-code tools is still going to evolve. But we're entering into this place where people are starting to experiment, right? Webflow introduced memberships and logic, and now you got the beginnings of something that could be a complete ecosystem. It may take them 5 years to finish that, right? Same thing with a lot of these other companies. Like we could be on a 2, 3, 4, 5 year cycle. I doubt this is something that in 6 months, a year, somebody's going to come out and be like, ta-da, right? And so I do think there's a lot to get through before we see a lot of that, but I think that we're headed in that direction.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's take Airtable's interface designer as an example. Really nice step in the right direction that you're able to create this interface from your data. But really, the complete ecosystem is creating a Webflow type tool inside Airtable. Having your data in Airtable and then having an interface designer for the public for front end web design to mix with that information. So I think their interface designer launch was very strong, a really nice step in the right direction, but it's not there yet for the complete picture.
Yeah.
And I think all of them are at that level. Webflow, Bubble, Airtable. It's very similar where they're all at.
Yeah, who just asked the question? Tanat was asking here, what happens if Bubble improves their front end design and dev? How does that factor into the equation? It's going to happen, right? Like they're going to work on how do you do this better. And they have to be looking at what Webflow's doing and saying, how can we steal some of that? I got to imagine Webflow's looking at Bubble saying, how can we steal some of that? Like that's how these games play, right? That's how the market gets pushed forward. I do think that for the same reason WordPress can't compete, Bubble can't compete, right? Like they can compete with what they're doing and they can grow their product, but they're not going to be able to build the same front end type tool that, you know, Webflow has built. You know, they just can't because they didn't start with that. It would take a restructuring, just for the same reason Webflow right now can't, you know, build the back end out in a blink, right? Why they can't just say, okay, 10,000 items is, you know, no problem. Let's just flip that switch, because it requires some re-engineering, it requires some, you know, some back end finessing there. So to net, that's what I think. Bubble has an opportunity to grow and be competitive. I think they've got a long way to go before their front end is competitive with Webflow, but I think Webflow's got the same long way to go before they get to the back end that, you know, Bubble has. So looks like Joe dropped here. We're trying to get him back. So just give us a second. Let me see what else is coming in on the questions. Webflow required to build their infrastructure before they build the marketplace. That's why they're doing now. They'll release early stage features in the meanwhile, for sure. Yeah, I think we've talked about that plenty. Let's see. Alan Connor keeps bringing up the AI. I know I keep mentioning it, but phase 3. Okay, phase 3 is where AI comes in. Alan, I'm super bullish long term on AI. I just think it's not there yet. And I've been like, for instance, I've been traveling around, same computers, same gear, different places. I can't get Google to like give me access to my stuff. Like the company that's supposed to be the smartest, they're, you know, the AI, whatever. Like they can't figure out that I'm the user that's still using my computers, even though I'm in different places. And I have to go through all these different hurdles. And it's like, it's just so far out. It's a cool concept. There's huge advances being made in AI. I think we will see a ton of acceleration in that space. Again, I just don't think it's like 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now. I really think like, you know, some of these will be going on. Yeah, Zuki's saying, did we lose Joe? We did lose Joe, and I'm not seeing him come back on in the background, so I can pull him back in here. So we'll try to keep just keep the vibes alive until he jumps back in here. Let's see. Babs is saying everyone thinks they want open source until something goes south and you're on your own. 100% for sure. Let's see. Let's hope that when they do, plugins work similar to the way Finsweet integrates into Webflow. The bar is set very high. Yeah, I think there's going to be a number of different ways that plugins will pop into that space, and I'll be excited to see how that all plays out. Let's see. Shopify have high demands for apps in their store. That's the way to go. 100%. Shopify is doing it right. I think Webflow would love to have a little bit of that action from the e-commerce space. Let's see. Okay, totally fully open. Alan Collin. Random question for the chat room. Does anyone know? That's not relevant. Maybe somebody can answer that for Alan. Previous next page nation buttons using attributes gone crazy. There's Joe. What's up, Joe?
Hey, I don't.
Check.
We're using Ninja for streaming. Maybe this is another case of open source versus closed source on the Vimeo.
Yeah, right. We switched from an enterprise platform to open source
Was the
platform.
Vimeo version.
Right. Okay, let's see. I don't know where we're at with these comments. I just kind of been riffing back and forth with the comments here. Let's look at our outline real quick and make sure there's nothing else we want to make sure we cover front to back here. I think that may be a good ending point. We could just probably riff with comments with whoever else is here. If there's any final thoughts, I like this front end as a service concept, right? We're all familiar with SaaS, software as a service, and we're all using SaaS products. Webflow is a SaaS product, and it's like, SaaS over the last, 10, 20 years has kind of been like, it's everything, right? But what about front ends as a service? Is that coming? So maybe this requires a full episode. I thought we'd be able to sneak it in and talk about some of that here. But I think that may need to be a dedicated conversation for that, because I think, when we get the ability, and this maybe comes with the plugin marketplace, the ability to send data back and forth. Maybe, like that'll be a cool thing where you can just plug in data from anywhere, but maybe that's for another conversation. So the last question is, what does this mean for the future of online creators, right? So what does this mean as these tools kind of evolve and grow and expand, and Webflow continues to evolve, Bubble continues to evolve, no code continues to evolve? What does that mean for creators? Let's take the last couple minutes here with the crowd and think about what does that mean for the future of creation, for the future of online creators, the way they'll be able to organize to make money online. This is something that I would love to do an episode on, and we will soon as we reveal some of the other products we're working on. But yeah, Joe, what are your thoughts on what this means for the online creators in general and the future of the web?
Explosion of online creators. It's a skyrocketing effect of online creators. We're seeing this not only in the web industry, but from all tools that allow people to post content or express themselves in some creative manner. Look at something like TikTok. This is a platform for people to go and do things, interact with people, engage people, and now we have this whole creator market. The same thing is happening in the no-code industry, that now we have this tool that lets me express some level of creativity, start a business around it, make money around it, and now this online creator infrastructure network is just going to grow and grow and grow exponentially.
Yeah, as that threshold for entry continues to be lowered, I think, there's a lot of people in the world right now that are fighting with WordPress websites. They're fighting with design files, trying to figure out how to dynamically put that stuff into a beautiful online interface. There's people thinking about how to start stores that want to do things that can't be done right now because it blends community and commerce, right? Right now, commerce is just buy a thing on my site or pay for a subscription. But I think what we're stepping into is that there will be all sorts of exchanges of value, information, interaction online, and those will all be rewarded. That's kind of what we're seeing with this Web3 thing, is like people are starting to figure out that how do we as the creative class get paid for what we're doing in these spaces? And I think this is the beginning of those doors being opened fully. They've been open for a while. YouTube's been around, social media's been around, WordPress has been around, these platforms have been around for a while, but the barrier to entry has been significant on a lot of them. And I think as we see that lower, it's just going to be, like Joe said, explosive. So any final thoughts before we just jump into some Q&A here? Should we just go through the rest of anything else?
Let's go Q&A. Yeah, would love to Q&A it.
Let's see. Let's go into here. Are you also upset by the Webflow lack of real release at the No Code Conf? What do we think? That it was just some more hype rather than actual tangible product releases? What are our thoughts on that, huh? You're trying to get us in trouble here, Shanor. These are the kind of questions that get us in trouble, man. Go ahead.
Well, I think the announcements were so good that I was not upset.
Yeah.
If the announcements were weak or if the announcements were unimpressive, then I do think I would be upset about it. But the announcements were strong, they make sense, and as long as they follow through with that, I am not upset whatsoever.
Mm.
And also, there was action. There's just because everything didn't turn on at No Code Conference doesn't mean there weren't real releases. They had their CMS improvement. This was a big improvement. This is being rolled out to people. They have there was one more thing that's in beta. The memberships in beta, starting to roll this stuff out. So it's actually happening. It just didn't turn on for every single person.
Right.
So no, I was not upset.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard, knowing how hard it is to build technical products and to get things right. It's so hard to have expectations for hard timelines and like firm release schedules
Sure.
and stuff like that. So
Sure.
we always, and I think you'll see like when we did our What Webflow Gets Wrong episode, like we didn't pick on the product. The product will evolve as it evolves. The community will evolve as it evolves. What we can do is kind of take the product we have and build the best we can with it and then grow from there and then push the limits, right? How can you maybe push the evolution forward? And that's kind of where I think things get interesting. So Penny is saying the creativity I see online now is amazing for sure. Daniel, thanks guys. Awesome conversation again. I've got to go. Check you later. Let's see, Josh. How likely do you think some sort of Webflow esports website, web app will arise, and ballpark prediction on when? Joe, any thoughts on that? You think like building, like in Webflow? Like I mean, I see people doing speed building, and we do clone comp every year. But I don't know if you mean further than that, Josh. But any thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, that one's tough because it's subjective. You know, with the video game based esports, you can have a winner and a loser objectively through the game itself. But when you have something so subjective as design, that thing is really hard for me to imagine. So we have the clone comp, we have the speed building challenges. These are subjective, they're fun, but I don't see a formalized version of that at least anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Would love to bring up a comment from
Yeah.
Miles Butler. Will this increase or decrease the need for people with technical skills? Example coding. Well, I think greatly increase the need for people with technical skills. Right now at Finsweet, we are not looking for any Webflow developers to join the team. We are looking exclusively for technical developers. And we just brought on 2 technical developers yesterday. And we want more. We want to bring in as many technical minds to our company as possible. And this is partly because our engagement with the community has a backbone of our technical skill. And also, our clients are asking for it. So, if our clients are asking for it at the top level, at the enterprise level, this is going to start trickling down to the smallest of small websites. Maybe not tomorrow, but over the next few years, I think there'll be a lot of technical requirements all across the web
Yeah.
because people have more and more demands. They see another site with this functionality, they want it. They see another thing with this functionality, they want it. So, absolutely increase technical skills, start learning it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with all that. Shanor was saying no release was touchable. That's all great stuff. So that's a follow up to his last question. I disagree. Lots of people are playing with the membership stuff. People have gotten access to other things too. So, yeah, just because you didn't, or just because everyone doesn't mean it, didn't, doesn't mean it's not out there. So, this is a question from Babis. What do you guys think about what Wiz is doing?
Uh, Interesting platform. I think this is a great concept for connecting Webflow to other platforms. And we see that a lot with all different types of apps, whether it's Zapier or whether it's even something like an Airtable, where you have some other process, some other function being used that's going to integrate with Webflow. So yeah, I think Wiz is a great platform, a lot of bright future ahead of that.
Yeah. Max North saying, do you think there will become a co-op between Webflow and Shopify? I could see.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, not at a core
No
level,
way.
but I could also see a Webflow plugin for Shopify, or like I could see a Shopify plugin for Webflow where you could bring data in. I don't know why or how, but I bet somebody will build it at some point. 5 years from now when
In the
sure.
in the plugin marketplace, yes. If the plugin marketplace is done right and you can integrate with that, yes. But I think from company to company, Shopify as a company to Webflow as a company, I can't see that happening.
Yeah, agree with that. Okay, Maria, I went low code in Webflow in my first month in it. There you go. Yeah. It's always no
Yep.
code until you need to get a little further. Schnorr saying also about Wiz is very technical. It's not for every Webflow user. Sure, there's some
Yeah.
technical hurdles there.
So it's really similar to having the technical knowledge of HTML and CSS and Webflow. You can use Webflow and not know anything about HTML and CSS. It's a great platform, even if you know nothing. You can still do something in Webflow. But once you have that HTML and CSS knowledge, I think it takes your Webflow to the next level. And I think it's very similar to Wiz, that from my understanding, you can set up some rather simple things, but once you have the understanding of those features, the platform becomes a lot more powerful. But the technical skills and the knowledge skills in Wiz is definitely more demanding than the knowledge skills required for Webflow. But yeah, I agree, Schneer, that it's not for everybody.
Okay, I think we're at a good break. I'm getting some lag warnings on my internet here, so it looks like
Okay,
it
that's
looks
a
like we're
sign.
dropping some frames. I think the audio's been good the whole time. I don't think there's been any audio drop, but I do think there's like a little bit of lag in some of the video. So I think we'll wrap up with that. I don't think we missed any major Q&A there. If we see something, we can address it in the next show. Seems like a shitty mood dropping with 90 people on the stream. What's up, everybody? So go ahead and leave a like as a final call to action there on the video. If you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe. We're back next week again. As a reminder, we're doing a year in review. So we're gonna recap the full year 2021. And yeah, Gabe is saying audio was super consistent. Yeah, I think it was just dropping some frames. I think I hit a little. It's the CPU. This thing is just getting taxed even when I split the load. Every once in a while, it's not consistent, but every once in a while.
And also, if you missed the beginning of the stream, check out attributes. We have released a new solution, custom form select. It's going to allow you to design the Webflow dropdown to act as a native form select. That's a big, big one. If you're building websites, you will need this on your first site, on your second site, your third site. It's just going to make your forms look better. It's going to be more approachable. So go check that out. If you missed it, really big release for us.
Nice. Okay. The questions are going to keep coming in. Sorry, we won't be able to get to everything today. We appreciate everyone. Catch us again next week for our recap episode and every Tuesday for the Effort Growth. We're doing a live build again this Thursday. So if you want to hang out, get deep in the weeds with us, we're going to jump into, I don't know what, probably some more attributes, maybe some client first. I think, Joe, actually the client first stuff was good, like breaking down some renaming and like going into projects and showing where we can optimize with some client first naming stuff. Like that may be a good dive to Thursday. So
nice. Sure.
We'll figure that out. We'll be here Thursday at noon. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day and happy web flowing.